As a martial artist, first and foremost, I'm not interested in Wing Chun, tradition, or style. I'm not interested in flashy acrobatics, winning tournaments, or what looks cool. I'm only interested in what works. What keeps you alive in real life and death fight situations? What is the most effective way to defeat one or many opponents with or without weapons? How is the human body best trained to become a master of self-defense? What techniques, drills, and concepts must become second nature to ensure proper reaction and adaptation during the chaos of real-life combat? How can any system or style cover the literally infinite potential dangers faced? With so many different martial arts from all over the world, how can one separate the wheat from the chaff and discern which is the most effective? If you get in a fight with someone who is smaller, weaker, and slower than you, then your natural advantages will almost always defeat such an opponent without any training necessary. Therefore, if you're going to learn a self-defense style, shouldn't it specifically train you to defeat opponents who are bigger, stronger, and faster than you? Wing Chun is the only martial arts system known to be invented by a woman, the weaker gender, and was specifically designed to defeat bigger, stronger, faster, and multiple opponents, with or without weapons, simultaneously. Most traditional martial arts, like taekwondo, karate, capoeira, or others, are overly flashy and acrobatic, slaving to outdated and unusable forms, constantly drilling impractical techniques that are not effective on the street. The current trend of UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, MMA, mixed martial arts, and grappling styles like jiu-jitsu, judo, and wrestling has many people convinced that the pinnacle of effective self-defense is one or a combination of these hard-form, one-on-one fighting styles. While these styles are indeed formidable and have proven themselves in the ring, consider, in real life, when faced with the necessity to fight, you often must defeat multiple attackers simultaneously. In UFC, MMA, and cage fights, as well as traditional martial arts tournaments, the fighting itself, and thus the bulk of your training, is geared towards one-on-one confrontations of 2 or 3 minute rounds. In real life, however, the average fight lasts a mere 9 seconds, and often includes multiple attackers. Thus, the dominance and perceived effectiveness of hard-form, grappling, UFC, MMA, etc. is only valid in one-on-one fights when you can afford to spend minutes rolling around on the ground with your opponent trying to get a limb lock or stranglehold. In a real fight with multiple attackers, while you're busy rolling around wrestling one guy on the ground, his buddies are all standing straight kicking the snot out of you. Those attackers are often bigger, stronger, and faster than you. These competition fights are always pre-arranged so to only match 2 fighters with comparable skills and attributes. This means that these fighters are always training to defeat their mirror image. In real-life scenarios, however, your opponents will often be bigger, stronger, and faster than you, and only the soft-form martial arts are specifically designed to combat this. Wing Chun is a combination hard and soft style which employs simultaneous attack and defense, yields to all incoming pressure, and diverts it away from your center line while simultaneously attacking the opponent's center line. This advantage allows even novice Wing Chun practitioners to defeat opponents twice their size, strength, and speed. Those attackers often have weapons. Another issue that every martial artist must consider is self-defense against weapons. In tournament fighting styles, the bulk of your training is devoted to one-on-one empty-hand combat. If any self-defense against weapons is taught, it is usually minimal, difficult to develop, and quite ineffective in real life. Wing Chun's movements and concepts, however, are so universally applicable to any fight situation that empty-hand practice, weapons practice, and empty versus weapons practice all utilize exactly the same training techniques. This means regardless of the fight situation, you are poised and prepared with muscle memory to react more effectively to any empty hand or weapon attack, because all of your training is universally applicable regardless of how many attackers, how strong they are, or which weapons they have. There are no rules, referees, or tap-outs. In all tournament fights, there are regulations, referees, points, tap-outs, or knockdown rules, but in real-life fighting there is no such thing. This means if your martial art caters to tournament fighting, as most do, then your training is not comprehensive, not utilizing every weapon available to you. For example, Taekwondo has no punches to the head or infighting techniques. Judo, Aikido, and wrestling have almost no striking whatsoever. Even UFC and most MMA fighters train with rules in mind, like no groin strikes, no eye gouges, no hair pulling, no biting, etc. This may seem insignificant, but consider that the two most vulnerable spots on the human body are the eyes and groin. This means that most tournament fighters are merely training for unrealistic sparring situations in which they cannot even attack their opponent's two most vulnerable targets. Wing Chun, on the other hand, is not a tournament style, and practitioners always train to attack their opponent's most vulnerable targets, like eyes, groin, throat, elbow, and knee joints. Most fighting styles, such as boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, karate, taekwondo, muay thai, capoeira, etc., rely on speed, strength, and vigor to overcome an opponent, so unfortunately as you grow older, your effectiveness in using the fighting system diminishes. Wing Chun, however, relies more on philosophy, sensitivity, intuition, and other internal factors, which you will continue to improve upon your entire life. Wing Chun is scientific, logical, and concept-based, so both your understanding and ability will only increase with age. This is why 80-plus-year-old grandmasters like Ip Chun, Jim Fung, and others can still defeat all their students and generate incredible internal energy. Real fighting is dirty, no-holds-barred, spontaneous, full-force, explosive aggression. In actual combat, there are no rules, no regulations, no referees, no traditions, no tap-outs, and no gloves. So any system which caters to and trains with rules, regulations, and traditions in mind is ultimately not preparing you for actual combat, but for unrealistic sparring situations. For example, the average UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship MMA mixed martial arts match lasts almost 9 grueling minutes. The average street fight, however, lasts a mere 9 seconds. Why the huge difference? Is it just because they're wearing boxing gloves? No. The fact of the matter is that tournament fighting and martial arts styles which cater to tournament fighting, such as MMA, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Taekwondo, karate, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling, etc., all have a huge list of highly effective techniques and vulnerable targets which are completely off limits. The reason they are prohibited is because they are too effective, will end the fight too quickly, and could severely injure, maim, or kill the opponent. In the interest of clean competitions and good sportsmanship, it makes sense that certain targets and techniques be prohibited from tournament fights. But what happens when rules and traditions start to dictate your martial training? Instead of always practicing the most effective techniques on the softest targets, you actually train less effective techniques on harder targets. How can repeatedly drilling less than optimum techniques at less than optimum targets make you an optimum fighter? As the saying goes, practice doesn't make perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. In Western boxing, for instance, the extreme limitations are clear for everyone to see. You wear huge padded gloves, and almost every fighting technique imaginable is prohibited except punches to the torso and head. No kicks, no knees, no elbows, no headbutts, no groin strikes, no eye gouges, no grappling, no throws, just round after round of getting pounded by padded punches. Boxing is a perfect example of a fighting style with so many rules that its practical self-defense applications are very limited. It is clearly a sport and not a science of self-defense. Boxing's punches are undoubtedly second to none, but there is much more to effective self-defense than good punching. How does Western boxing prepare you to defeat an opponent carrying a knife? How does boxing deal with kicks, takedowns, and grappling? How does boxing handle multiple attackers? The answers are all the same. It doesn't, because it's against the rules and not part of the game. In the game or sport of Taekwondo, all punches to the head, kicks to the legs, and grabbing techniques are prohibited, so the result is a style full of fast-paced, flashy, spinning, jumping head kicks. These are definitely fun to watch and work during point sparring competitions, but in real-life combat, almost the entire repertoire of Taekwondo's techniques are pitifully ineffective and leave you off balance and vulnerable. Being a second-degree black belt and former Taekwondo instructor myself, I can say from experience that Taekwondo's kicks are second to none, but there is much more to effective self-defense than good kicking. Muay Thai, kickboxing, and MMA are much more dynamic and street effective than boxing or taekwondo, making use of knees, elbows, leg kicks, clinches, throws, and takedowns. But once again, there are no groin or throat strikes allowed, no eye gouges, no knee stomp kicks, no defense against weapons, and no defense against multiple attackers. These few limitations may seem insignificant, but keep in mind that most street fights involve either a weapon or multiple attackers, and the three most vulnerable targets on the human body are the eyes, groin, and throat. This means that Muay Thai, kickboxing, and MMA are not training or utilizing the most effective targets or techniques when it comes to real life or death combat. These styles also use a lot of low roundhouse kicks to the opponent's legs with the intention of wearing them down over time, which sounds good and works wonders during tournament bouts, but the average street fight lasts only 9 seconds and involves multiple attackers, so in actual combat, there's no time to strategize several kicks for wearing down your opponent's legs. You need more quick, direct, and devastating attacks to vulnerable targets.